Today was my birthday. It was a tradition to throw a barbecue and invite the whole world. Well, it wasn't that bad. Just family, friends, and neighbors. Even though I thought it was my day, I always felt obligated to actively participate in the preparations. Do you want to receive a birthday present right now or wait until the evening? Shower warm and ready, Darla chuckled. The nightgown had disappeared and she was playing coy. See you in the evening, little lady. Right now, I'll go downstairs and help the boys. I'll take a shower later. Todd was 18, and 2 months later, he left Meat to Texas. Terry was a year younger and already had a scholarship to Auburn. They were good sons, and I gave Darla credit for raising them right. We did a pretty good job in the yard and patio for a few hours and then fired up some grills. Todd started the smokers and Terry spread the dry oil all over the meat. Heck, the way things are going, I could probably sit back and let them take care of things themselves. Darla showed up just as we finished our prep work. Her 2 sisters came to help her with all the extra things. Today, we will need to feed more than 50 people. It's funny how friends appear when there is free food. I was 40 years old, but I felt like I was 20. And next month, Darla and I will celebrate our 20th wedding anniversary. It was a good marriage. The sex wasn't as hot as previous years, but it was still great until last year. He seemed to disappear about a year ago, shortly after Darla started working. Fear of an empty nest drove her out of the house. We didn't need the money, but she did need the social interaction. The guys and I went to the shower. I had a new shirt for just such an occasion that my mother had left at the beginning of the week. Darla wisely insisted that I wear an apron. It didn't take long before our guests began to arrive. Some brought dishes of food, others gifts, and others soft drinks. The weather was fine and the day promised to be wonderful. Darla looked gorgeous and, as always, was the perfect hostess. Next year, she will turn 40, but she will easily pass for 30. She has maintained her figure and appearance. I watched her flit around the tables, checking to make sure everything was okay. An ideal wife and an ideal mother. What more could a man wish for? I don't know where he came from, and I definitely didn't recognize him. He was tall and wearing a dark blue jacket. He stopped at the edge of the party area, leaned over and said something to one of the neighbors. She pointed at Darla. He thanked her and walked towards us. Darla noticed him approaching and seemed a little embarrassed. "Darla Connors?" My wife nodded. He handed her an envelope, which he took from the inside pocket of his jacket. "Darla Connors, you have been served with a notice. That's all." He turned and left as quietly as he had appeared. Of course, by this time, everyone at the party was already watching. Darla stood motionless. There was no emotion on her face. She looked at me, slowly turned around, and walked back into the house. I didn't understand anything. The usual chatter of the guests turned into muffled mutterings and whispers. In a desperate attempt to break the spell of the moment, I shouted, "Anyone want some more ribs? Come and take it." Todd and Terry came up to me. "What the hell is going on, Dad?" Terry tried to be restrained. "I have no idea." I could only shrug my shoulders. Todd headed into the house, but I stopped him. "Why don't you guys check if you need another beer or something to drink?" As the conversation in the courtyard began to return to normal, I relaxed a little. After 10 minutes, I decided it was time to talk to my wife. But alas. "Dad, Mom leaves in a Mustang." Terry pointed to the front of the house. My black Mustang convertible was speeding down the street faster than it should have. The backyard became quiet again as everyone watched her speed away. Darla usually drove the minivan, but it was parked inside. The Mustang was at hand. There were a lot of unanswered questions, but I think they could wait until my wife got home. After that, everything went downhill. Darla's sister Peggy brought out the cake, and I made a feeble attempt to look happy. Without Darla, everything seemed like a cloud. Friends and neighbors were the first to leave. The families lingered a little, but in the end, there was nothing more to talk about. Surprisingly, Darla's sudden departure was not a topic of conversation. I was alone with my 2 sons, and the house was quiet. They both looked at me, waiting for some sign or explanation. I had nothing to offer. I sat on the couch while they went to bed. In the morning, I was still there. Todd and Terry got up early. The smell of fresh coffee made me get up from the couch. Darla didn't return. Whatever was in that envelope must have been very important. I called her cell phone several times, but it was turned off. Of course, I stayed up half the night trying to figure out what was going on. The guys easily guessed that I wanted to be alone. A long, hot shower helped, but not much. On Sunday, I couldn't do much. Tomorrow, I'll see if the police can help. I don't know any cops or detectives, but I had a few friends at the courthouse. Hope they can help. We had one credit card and one debit card. The debit card was used for everyday items, and the credit card for larger purchases. If Darla was in trouble, she would have to use them. It took a few days for credit card purchases to show up in a bank account, but debit payments typically cleared within a couple of hours. First, I checked my credit card activity and found nothing. A debit card is a completely different story. About 2 hours after Darla left the house, she bought gasoline at the Pennsylvania-Ohio border. 2 hours later, she bought gas in Illinois, and her last transaction was at an ATM in Cedar Rapids, where she withdrew $300. I was finishing my third cup of coffee when I realized she wasn't coming back. She wasn't just killing time, she was running away. I loved my wife and didn't want to hurt her, but I also didn't want to encourage her in what she was doing. Even though it was Sunday, I was able to cancel both cards within 10 minutes. About an hour later, I called the police and reported that my Mustang had been stolen. I didn't tell them that my wife took it. I explained that there was a debit card in the machine and that it was used in 3 states west. I was embarrassed to lie to the police, but I thought it was the only way to get attention. They seemed more interested in getting rid of me than in questioning me about the circumstances. I quickly took stock of the house, and the only things that seemed to be missing were her purse and a small bag. I had no idea what she put in there. For several hours, I wondered what to do with her cell phone. Since I canceled the cards, I was hoping that would make her call home and explain everything. I never found time to have lunch. Before I knew it, it was dinner time and my sons showed up with a couple of pizzas. There was a ton of food left over from yesterday, but I have to admit the hot slices were delicious. Finally, we started talking about what happened. I briefed them on what I knew and they offered their support. That night, I slept in my bed. Darla never called. I called into work and took a week off. I was a little sick of the job, but it paid well. I was delivering gravel to one of the local quarries. It was hot and dirty, but there weren't many decisions to make. I simply picked up the goods, transported them, unloaded them, and received my salary. Immediately after Darla began working at Prescott Benefits Company, we attended several corporate events. They hosted parties and picnics where I met the people she worked with. I just now realized that for the last 6 months or so, we have not attended any more meetings. In fact, she didn't even mention them. They were important to her when she started working for the company, and then suddenly they weren't. I'm not very good at remembering people I meet, but I remembered Bob and Margie Gilson. Bob was a carpenter, and Margie worked in the same office as Darla. "Margie, this is Brian Connor. Do you have a minute to talk?" "Hello, Brian. I am very busy now. Hopefully nothing important." "Darla didn't come to work today, did she?" "No, we actually didn't expect this." "Oh, really? Why is this?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. It was obvious that Margie was uncomfortable talking to me. "Brian, I don't think I want to discuss this with you. I think you should talk to your wife." "I would be glad, but I have no idea where she is." Another long pause followed. "Brian, I'm very sorry, but I have a lot of work to do. I have to go." Before I could say anything, she hung up. Suddenly, I had the feeling that something was going on that Darla didn't want me to know about. This explains why we no longer attended any corporate events. She was afraid that someone would accidentally say or do something that might give her away or make me believe she was up to no good. I grabbed a cold beer and went out onto the porch to think. I've noticed something over the past few months, but haven't given it much thought. Darla began working overtime several evenings a week. Not to the point of waving red flags, but it has become commonplace. She stopped talking about work when she was home, and we avoided talking to anyone from the company. On the other hand, she did not change either her appearance or her dress. She didn't buy any new clothes or fashionable underwear. There were no suspicious phone calls or emails that I could recall. I trusted my wife not to turn into a bitch at home or cut me off romantically. It was time to make a few more phone calls. Donald Curry was an old high school friend who worked in court. I didn't know what he did, but I knew he was involved with computers. I explained the problem to him and planned to meet him when he returned from work. Before leaving the house, I called the construction company and learned that Bob Gilson was working at an apartment complex nearby. I planned to meet him right after lunch. When I arrived, the team was at lunch. Bob smiled and walked over to the car. He seemed much friendlier than Margie. "Brian, I'm glad to see you. I assume you want to talk about Darla." "Bob, I talked to Margie this morning and she refused to tell me what was going on. You have to let me know man to man without any nonsense." I liked Bob because he was a blue-collar guy like me, but if he tried to fool me, I would be angry. Brian, I usually shut Margie off when she starts gossiping about work, but here's what I know. Darla has been busy with a married guy in the office for almost 6 months now. They tried to keep it a secret, but it became common knowledge in the blink of an eye. Margie stopped talking to Darla when she found out, like many other girls. "We missed you at the office party, but we decided that Darla was keeping you out on purpose. That's all." "Do you know who this guy is?" "No. I don't pay attention as much as I should. I can find out." "Don't worry about it, Bob. I'll sort it out." That pretty much sums it up for me. There were no misunderstandings. It was just a stupid husband who had no idea what was going on in his own home. 10 minutes later, I canceled her cell phone. Now she couldn't call home. I was already returning home when they called me on my cell phone. Cedar Rapids police found the Mustang parked in the bus station parking lot. It was towed to the impound lot, and I could pick it up at any time for $300. I stopped by the police station and was given a printout of the report. The only conclusion I could draw was that Darla left the car and took the bus. I had no way of knowing where she was going, but I assumed it was westerly. I didn't even know she had friends in the area. I went to the bank, closed all the joint accounts, and opened new ones in my name only. I changed the beneficiary on my insurance policies to boys. I drank quite a lot before Donald arrived. "Brian, there was a divorce hearing today, and Darla was called to testify. Of course she didn't show up. Marcia Ridgway was divorcing her husband, Kelsey, using adultery as the basis. Mrs. Ridgway wanted Darla to testify that she was the woman with whom her husband committed adultery. So the divorce didn't go through without Darla's testimony? No. Everything went as planned. It appears that Mrs. Ridgway had photographs, videos, and taped phone calls that supported her claim. She didn't really need Darla's confession. I think she only called her to embarrass her. Looks like it worked. What is Darla's situation now? Nobody cares about this now. There's nothing new she can contribute, and it doesn't matter." Kelsey Ridgway more or less confessed after his wife's lawyer presented all the evidence. The judge granted the divorce claim on the spot. It becomes final after 6 months. He will receive large alimony payments to his wife and children. Does he have children? 3, all under 10 years old. He will pay for this mistake for a long time. Donald and I talked a little. I thanked him for his help and asked the bartender for coffee. I drank a little more than I should have, but still managed to get home without killing myself or anyone else. It was stupid under the circumstances. I wrapped 6 ribs in foil and popped them in the oven while I showered. Todd and Terry returned home and headed straight for the pork. Todd was delighted with the Mustang situation. After 20 minutes, after some discussion, I finally agreed to let both boys take the bus to Cedar Rapids and drive the car home. I gave them $600 to cover expenses. Terry scribbled a note on the computer giving me permission to pick up the car and take it home. He seemed to know what he was doing, so I kept my mouth shut and signed. The next morning, we all had breakfast at IHOP and I dropped them off at the bus station. I chuckled slightly as they boarded. They had no idea what it was like to spend 2 days on a Greyhound. It was a great life lesson. I called the Cedar Rapids Police Department to have them there. They promised that there would be no problems. There was one more thing I had to take care of. Don't waste a lot of time to figure out where Kelsey Ridgway's office is. Seeing me, Margie immediately reached for the phone, but it was already too late. I didn't introduce myself, but simply started hitting him on the head and shoulders. He made several feeble attempts to defend himself, but ended up lying behind his desk on the floor. I kicked him in the gonads several times before the guards pulled me back. It turned into a bloody mess, and I felt much better. After this, events developed quickly. Before I knew it, I found myself in the police station, in front of a judge, and on my way to the county jail. There was no trial, just the judge and me. I got 60 days and I didn't care. At the first opportunity, I called the guys to bring them up to date. I could have sworn I heard Terry laughing on the phone. The house could be left empty for several days. Well, things weren't exactly like they show on TV. I mean, it wasn't a walk in the park, but I didn't feel like my life was on the line or that I was going to be raped at any moment. They were basically a bunch of nasty farts who couldn't play well with others and a bunch of stupid kids. Children and farts hardly communicated. A separate chamber was out of the question. I ended up sharing a cell with a 300-pound gorilla named Jocko, who beat his wife when he caught her in bed with his brother. I didn't know what happened to my brother. Jocko and I got along great. I, of course, took the top bunk. The food in the cafeteria was heavier than I liked, and Jocko was more than willing to help me with what I didn't want to eat. Other than the fact that he farted more than any other man on the staff, he was the perfect roommate. 3 days later, Terry and Todd paid me a visit. The car restoration trip went well, but they weren't expecting any bus trips in the near future. They didn't have any information about Kelsey or her mother. They brought me 2 packs of cigarettes even though I don't smoke. Todd said he thought they were valuable for trading. He's seen too many movies. Jocko, however, was overjoyed when I gave them to him. He said he needed to smoke to lose weight. I had no problem leaving the boys in the house alone. Todd went to school a week before I got out of prison. He got into the minibus and left the Jeep with Terry. Terry and I celebrated my homecoming by going to Red Lobster. He was excited to start his senior year of high school. Unfortunately, he had to go through this without me. I had other plans. Margie couldn't believe her eyes when I walked past her desk the next morning. I winked at her and headed back to Kelsey's office. 3 hours later, I was on the bus again to the county jail, this time for 6 months. Terry thought it was funny and immediately called his brother in College Station. Jocko welcomed me with open arms. I handled Kelsey better this time. I even feel like I broke something. Of course, I never received any feedback, so I can't know for sure. I was fired from my job, a big surprise. There was enough money stashed away to pay for the house and cover living expenses. Terry took care of everything with no problem. Apart from Terry, the rest of my family visited me regularly. Terry made sure I always had cigarettes for Jocko. Both of Darla's sisters came to visit and expressed their sympathy. Neither they nor anyone else in the family had heard anything about Darla. We actually had a family Thanksgiving and a Christmas celebration in prison. I was still a month away when I lost Jocko. I didn't actually lose him because he got free before me. His wife and brother moved to Florida, and he had no idea what he would do. Terry thought it would be great to have Jocko as a guest until he got settled. He offered him a job at a tree trimming company, but Jocko decided to move to the south, where it was warmer. I think of Florida. The night before Jocko left, Kelsey Ridgway was found beaten to a pulp in a downtown alley. He told police he was attacked by a monkey. I thought it was funny because I had a solid alibi. After being released, I decided I'd had enough of Kelsey's flesh. He didn't actually work in the area anymore, and I didn't want to look for him. I took a course to learn how to operate big rigs. It wasn't much more difficult than the dump trucks I was used to. I had a few months to kill before Terry got into Auburn, so I spent time renovating the house. I wanted to sell it, but it was in Darla's and my name, and I didn't want the hassle. No one has heard a word from Darla since she ran away. Terry took the Mustang to Alabama because it was a chick magnet. I found a couple who were willing to buy a house with a cloud over it. I wasn't sure what that meant, but they got a good discount on the price. Their lawyer assured them that Darla's signature was not needed, and I was not going to argue with him. I just wanted to come out of it, free and clear. I used the down payment to buy a sleeper rig. Before I knew it, I was already on the road and free. I never bothered to file for divorce from Darla because I never saw the need for it. I had no interest in getting married again. You don't meet many interesting women in prison, and Jocko rejected me as an alternative. Apparently, Darla wasn't planning on divorcing me either, because I didn't get any surprise in the mail. I didn't have any problems getting a job. I wasn't desperate for money, so I could be a little picky in my searches. It didn't take me long to learn the tricks of the trade, and I really enjoyed my new life. Things got interesting while I was delivering a load of farm equipment to South Dakota. It was June, so there were no problems with the weather. I dropped the load and headed south, about 5 miles off Highway 90, when I stopped at the Belly Up Diner. I just told the waitress to bring my homemade favorite and coffee. 3 large TVs were showing 3 different programs that no one was actually watching. The one closest to me showed mostly political advertisements, and one of them caught my attention. John Hemingway ran for the U.S. House of Representatives. He was handsome and seemed to have a silver tongue. Next to him, dressed like Jackie Kennedy with a big smile on her face, stood his new wife, Darla, my Darla. My thoughts were broken when the largest bowl of hash I had ever seen plopped down in front of me. That's it, big boy. Do you need anything else? Who is this woman standing next to the clever talker? Waitress Betsy snorted slightly. This is Hemingway's new candy. He needed a wife to run for president. There were rumors that he wasn't straight, if you know what I mean. I started dumping Tabasco onto the hash pile. She looks a little old to be a sweetie. I think. You can't be too picky when you're in a hurry. She's pretty, though, and I think older women make better lovers, don't they? Darla looked really good. Her blonde hair was now brown and looked like it had been styled at a fancy salon. Her makeup was flawless, and her dress fit her like a glove. It wasn't really a dress, more like a tailored suit. I looked up from the TV and noticed that the waitress had gone back to work. The hash was great, and it was easy to see why the parking lot was full. My coffee cup was filled twice before I put the plate away. The pie looked good, but I didn't have any room left. Betsy took my empty plate and placed the check in front of me. Will he win the elections? He has a lot of money behind him from powerful people in Sioux Falls. No one here wants anything to do with him, but we don't have the votes or the money to stop him. I smiled as I pulled out the money clip. You know something, don't you? Are you sure they got married? Yeah. They actually did it on TV, like it was a reality show or something. But no honeymoon. They said they were waiting until he took office. I smiled as I dropped the 10 on the counter. I'm not looking for trouble, and I don't stick my nose where it shouldn't. However, I would like to ask you a favor. Which one? Can I sleep for a couple of hours here in the yard before I get on the highway? No problem. I nodded in gratitude and left. Betsy watched from the window as I climbed into the car. I was just beginning to enjoy some well-deserved sleep when there was a knock on the door. I didn't pay attention to it for a few moments, but it didn't stop. Leave. They allowed me to park for a couple of hours. Whoever it was didn't leave, so I had to open the door. Betsy said, I need to talk to you. Do you have a few minutes? It was dark. It was raining. All I could see was a stern-looking woman in a poncho. I didn't break any laws. Leave me alone. Just give me 10 minutes. She looked and sounded determined. Sorry, lady. I am not interested. Go call one of the other guys. I'm not a girl of easy virtue, damn it. I need to talk to you about Hemingway. Meet me inside in 10 minutes. That seemed to calm her down. As she closed the door, she smiled slightly. Maybe it would have been better to just let her climb into the car, even though she was soaking wet. As I pulled out my raincoat, I looked at my watch. I only managed to sleep 3 hours. There was still a decent crowd in the restaurant. She was sitting in a booth by the window with 2 cups of coffee. Her hair was straight, shiny, black, with a small white streak on one side. In fact, she was nowhere near a girl. She was at least 35, maybe 40. The whole look was round, with high cheekbones and no makeup. I extended my hand and sat down. Brian Connors, Sally Wilmot. Do you want something to eat? No, thank you, I ate 3 hours ago. She responded with a polite smile. Betsy said you might know something about Darla Hemingway. I wanted to talk to you before you left. What the hell is so important about Darla Hemingway? My brother Franklin is running against him in the election. Franklin represents the people in the area, farmers, ranchers, and Native Americans. Hemingway is supported by Sioux Falls businessmen. We're not anti-business, but we don't feel the locals will get fair treatment if Hemingway is elected. Okay, but I still don't understand what his wife has to do with all this. We don't know either. All we know is that something is wrong. Our election commission tried to check her background, but found nothing. His campaign people have not released any information about her. This may not be a big deal, but we're getting desperate. And Betsy said maybe you know something. I guess I better not become a professional poker player if the waitress can read me so easily. She leaned back in her chair. She was right. You really know something. Will you tell me, or will I have to beat it out of you? I finished my coffee and grinned. I found her choice of words funny. It was actually just funny. I waved my empty cup at Betsy and leaned forward. I think I like the second option better. I have no idea what came over me. It was not in my nature to be clever or resort to hints. Probably because I liked her behavior. She was self-confident and straightforward. I had the feeling that she always knew what she wanted and knew how to get it. Betsy refilled her coffee, and Sally Wilmot stared at me. I'm really sorry. It was rude and impolite of me. I will answer any questions. Sally covered her mouth with her hand and laughed quietly. It's okay, Mr. Connors. I'm not that sensitive, and I thought your response was cute. I shouldn't have asked this question the way I did. Oh, good. This means that the second option is still open. No, damn it. How do you know Darla Hemingway? She is my wife. We have been married for over 20 years and have never divorced. I haven't seen her in years, but unless she got divorced somewhere I don't know about, we're still married. Sally seemed at a loss for words. She didn't say anything at all. She just sat and looked at me. What was her maiden name when she got married? She paused for a few seconds before speaking. Oh my God. Her maiden name was Connors. The bitch didn't even try to hide it. Woo-hoo! Of course, Betsy came running, and all the heads in the room turned to us. I was a little embarrassed by the attention, but Sally seemed delighted. Sally jumped up and kissed Betsy right on the lips. She walked across the foyer and took out her cell phone. Betsy blushed slightly and leaned towards me. What the hell did you tell her? I haven't seen her this excited in 5 years. The smartass that had been hidden in me for years began to emerge. I looked at Betsy and said, I told her that you and I are going to get married. She immediately realized it was a joke, and I was rewarded with a blow to the arm. So will you tell me? No, let Sally tell it herself. I'm going to go back to my setup and see if I can get back to work. Nice to meet you, Betsy. The rain stopped, but I never made it to the rig. Sally grabbed my hand before I was halfway there. You can't leave yet. You should talk to Franklin. It won't take long, just a few minutes. I would really like to give it all up. Now I regret saying something. How long will it take him to get here? He's going to meet us at my place. Do you want to come with me, or will you go in your truck? I'll follow you. The Jeep van Sally was driving was 10 years old, maybe older. After a couple of miles of crushed rock, we found ourselves on a worn gravel road leading to an equally worn trailer. Someone was there because the room was well lit. There was no lawn, only gravel, and not much at that. I tried to stay away from the dirt, but it was difficult. There were no other cars nearby, so I assumed Franklin was on his way. Just outside the trailer door was a place for wet coats and boots. This seemed like a good idea, especially since there were already a lot of coats and boots there. It was an interesting layout, mainly because it felt more like a classroom than a living room. Instead of end tables, there were desks. There were computers instead of desk lamps, and 3 teenagers were looking right at me. Hi, guys. This is Brian. He's here to help Uncle Franklin. Sally went straight to the kitchen and started making coffee. Instead of saying hello, I nodded slightly to my audience. Under the circumstances, I felt a little awkward. I looked around the room but saw nothing to indicate the presence of Mr. Wilmot. Having 2 sons, it was easy for me to notice that the boys were close in age. I assumed they were 16, 17, and 18. There was no TV, no music, All three of them seemed to be either sitting at the computer or reading a book. The strange thing was that they did not look bookish or boring, but looked like normal, strong, and active children. Brian, these are my sons. The oldest is Tracy, the next is Tyler, and the youngest is Tanner. They took turns smiling and nodding at me. I couldn't help but grin to such an extent that my amusement became obvious. I know. It's a little strange that we gave them names that all start with the letter T. No, it doesn't amuse me. I just have two sons, Todd and Terry. I thought it was a damn strange coincidence. Tyler spoke first. Where are your sons? The question earned him a stern look from his mother, which he seemed to ignore. Todd works at the University of Texas, and Terry works at Auburn. This simple statement lit up the entire room. Suddenly, Tracy came to life as if the Energizer Bunny had hit him. I'm leaving for College Station in August. How long has he been there? What is he learning? Sally finally touched his shoulder. Slow down, boy. Slow down. I'm sure Mr. Connors will have time to answer all your questions. As it turned out, Tracy had a full football scholarship and was already enrolled in ROTC. Tyler was accepted into the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis and left within a year. Sally's husband was in the National Guard and died in the Bay 5 years ago. She didn't go into detail, and I didn't push. Tanner, the youngest of the boys, had not yet decided what he wanted to do, but his mother made sure that he studied regularly. I had no idea what was keeping Franklin, but for the next hour I was busy talking with Sally's sons. Sally just stood back and watched as I interacted with them, just as I interacted with mine. Hanging out with Sally's kids made me realize how much I miss my boys. Finally, Franklin Honeycutt arrived with 2 assistants. After the show, Sally returned the boys to work, while the adults gathered around the kitchen table. Apparently, they had some doubts about me being Darla's husband, and it wasn't important enough for me to get into an argument about it. As I got ready to leave, I thanked Sally for the coffee and told the guys I was glad to meet them. Sally was not involved in this. Damn it, Brian, sit down. Sally took over the conversation as if she were the one running for president. Brian, do you have a marriage certificate or something to prove that you are married to Darla Hemingway? It only took me a few seconds to pull the wedding photo out of my wallet. She was older now and her hair was different, but you could still tell it was Darla. I looked at one of Franklin's henchmen, who was holding a laptop in front of him. Go to the Berks County Archives, Pennsylvania. You should be able to log into the marriage registration system from 1960 to 1990. Just search my name, Brian William Connors. Sally brought me a fresh cup of coffee and smiled slightly. She seemed glad I didn't leave. August 17th, 1979, right? Franklin seemed a little happier now. I nodded and took a sip of fresh coffee. Good luck finding any divorce records. As far as I know or anyone else knows, I am still married. Feel free to explore all of this as much as you like. It doesn't make any difference to me. The conversation became a little redundant and a little boring. This time, no one stopped me. Do you mind if I sleep before I leave? No. Not at all. Sally walked me to the door. I looked back to say goodbye to Franklin and his cronies, but they were deeply engrossed in what the politicians were doing. The boys waved or nodded at me as I walked away. An hour later, I heard Franklin and his group leaving. I decided that I could finally get some sleep when I heard another knock on the door. Sally jumped into the booth wearing a flannel nightgown. She put her finger to her mouth, indicating that she didn't want me to talk. We were far enough from the house that the boys couldn't hear anything, but I think she just didn't want to talk. She spent at least an hour with me in the sleeping car. It was passionate and loving, but a little uncomfortable. The rig's cabin setup is great for driver sleep, but that's about it. I did the best I could under the circumstances. She left as quietly as she came. Not a word was spoken. The sun had already risen when the door began to make noise again. It was Tanner. He told me to go into the house for breakfast. Fortunately, boys and men like the same food, and Sally knew how to cook it. I spent another hour chatting with the guys and felt pretty comfortable. Comfortable enough to ask Sally's permission to take a warm shower before leaving. An hour later, I was finally on my way, but not for long. It was the local sheriff who stopped me before I got to the highway. Looks like Mr. Honeycutt needed to talk to me some more. I had to follow the police car back to the belly, where Franklin was waiting for me. He was just having breakfast and invited me to join. Betsy brought me coffee and took the opportunity to wink. She must have been closer friends with Sally than I thought. Looks like Franklin's lawyers wanted me to stay. I used the old cliched phrase, "time is money," to discourage him, but he just laughed and continued eating. It would have been very easy to agree to everything and then just run away, but I decided that I might want to stay a few more days, especially after last night. The company would pay for the motel room and food, but that was all they could do. It was a good opportunity for me to wash my clothes and catch up on bills and banking. Wi-Fi is excellent. I sent the guys a couple of emails and paid all the bills. I was just getting the second batch out of the dryer when Sally came in. I don't think I've ever seen a woman who looked better in jeans. She had 3 children and a great body. Her blue Oxford shirt was not tucked in, but was belted with a silver belt. Her skin had a natural glow. She was one hell of an attractive woman. "What the hell are you doing here, Brian?" I shrugged innocently. "I'm folding laundry." "You should have left. You said you were leaving this morning." "Everything has changed. Your brother asked me to stay a few more days. I came to you last night only because I thought you wouldn't be there today. After this, I can't keep you here." She found it difficult to find words. She didn't seem to be expecting anything more than a one-night stand and had no idea how to handle it. I was amused by her confusion and considered it a cause for some amusement. After my conversation with Franklin this morning, I'm seriously thinking about buying a house and staying here forever. What's really going on? I sat Sally down on the bench next to the dryers. Your brother insisted that I stay a few more days until they come up with something that would help them go after Hemingway. I promised to stay away from you and the boys until he's done. I didn't want to embarrass you or do anything that would make you feel awkward. That's not the problem, Brian. Boys like you, they wanted to know when you could come again. They were a little upset when I told them you were leaving. Tyler wanted me to talk to you about staying a little longer. I'm really sorry. I was just trying to be friendly. They reminded me of my own people, and it was easy for me to talk to them. I didn't want to create any problems for you. Of course, I didn't make it any easier for you when I showed up at your truck last night. You definitely made things complicated. This hint caused a poke in the hand and a smile. Why did you come? Sally shrugged and looked a little embarrassed. I'm not sure. 5 years have passed since my husband died. 5 years without any comfort or passion. It just seemed like a great opportunity, especially since you were supposed to be leaving today. She started getting angry at me again. Why didn't you leave, damn it? I picked up a stack of folded laundry, handed it to her, and then grabbed the rest before heading back to my motel room. She hesitated at the door for a moment until I raised my finger to my lips, just as she had done last night. Her shy smile turned into a wide smile as she closed the door behind her. It is much easier to make love to a woman in a normal bed. However, what I liked most was the shower. Even the hot waiter didn't stop us. Before leaving, she made me promise to be home for dinner at 6 o'clock. How could I refuse? I was ready. Damn, I've already showered twice today. Dinner at Sally's became a regular occurrence, and Betsy became my greatest ally. Betsy and Sally have been friends since childhood. Betsy took great pleasure in telling me about what they did when they were younger. The conversations about Sally's husband were sad and not nearly as lighthearted, but it gave me a good idea of who Sally was and why I wanted to get to know her better. I never intended to stay in South Dakota, but the longer I was here, the more I wanted to stay. By the end of the first week, all the kids had Texas A&M jerseys and Auburn jerseys. Sally kept one of the Auburn shirts for herself. In any case, it was too big for Tanner. I didn't pay much attention to political issues. Franklin and his team seemed to get along just fine without me. One way or another, the press found out about Darla's dark past, and began to play on it. Hemingway's people tried and failed to do nothing. The more they denied it or ignored it, the worse it got. His popularity began to decline rapidly. I never got involved in anything until I visited the motel early one morning. The woman at my door was tall, blonde, and straight as a pole. I was wearing boxers, but invited her in anyway. She avoided looking at me as I pulled on the 501, but I watched her every move. She was wearing a dark suit with a white shirt and low black heels. Definitely a professional. My name is Mary Beth Steinmetz. I'm an attorney with Leavitt's Brothers in Sioux Falls. I assume you are Brian William Connors? She knew my middle name. This was not good. Our company represents the interests of John Hemingway. We recently learned that your marriage to Darla Connors was never properly dissolved, and we hope to rectify this issue. How? The state has laws that allow marriages to be quickly dissolved under certain circumstances. We believe that we can take advantage of these statutes with your cooperation. Do you want me to divorce my wife? Yes. Why should I do this? She seemed puzzled. I don't think she expected this answer. At this point, I would be happy with a divorce, but on my terms, and I didn't want her to know about it. Ms. Steinmetz just sat there and looked at me. Miss Steinmetz, would you be so kind as to explain to me in layman's terms why my wife and I no longer live together? Don't embellish and be completely honest. If you can do this, I will consider continuing our conversation. She leaned back and undid the top button of her blouse. 3 years ago, your wife had an affair with a colleague. When you found out about this, she ran away because she could no longer look you or her sons in the eye. She hasn't spoken to any of you since then. Is this clear enough for you? This is good. It is a fact that you have hit the nail on the head. So what's the problem? If you've been following the news, you know that Darla and Mr. Hemingway are in a bit of trouble. We can't undo what's been done, but we hope to make it a little easier. By arranging a quick divorce for her? That's right. And tell me again, what will I get from this? Freedom. Damn it. I'm happy with the way things are now. How will my life be better? What do you need, Mr. Connors? Do you need money? How many? Give me something to discuss. What terms of divorce do you offer? There are none of them. That's why it can be done so quickly. There is no money changing hands, no assets to divide, no storage issues. You both walk away with what you have at the moment, and neither of you owes the other anything. The deal is clear and final. How long will it take? Less than 90 days. So this will end before the elections? Yes, I hope so. She admitted it but didn't want to play along. Should I see my wife? No. In fact, we'd prefer you didn't. Should I stay here until this is all over? The question made her sigh. Yes. Okay. I will agree to this on one condition. You must pay for my room and board. A smile suddenly appeared on Mary Beth Steinmetz's face. I could tell it was better than she had hoped. I could probably hook her up for more money, but right now, just getting my freedom sounded good. I can prepare the papers for your signature this afternoon. Will this be okay? Wonderful. I'll have to consult my lawyer, but I don't think there will be any problems. I didn't have a lawyer, but I wanted to talk to Franklin first. Your lawyer? Give me a business card. I promise to call if he doesn't like anything. If they don't call you, bring the papers. As she pulled away, I saw Sally on the other side of the parking lot. Before I could wave to her, she was running down the road. After a quick shave, I got dressed and heated to belly up. Betsy looked at me sternly with a cup of coffee. Do I have a chance to explain? Not for me, Mr. Connors. But you better have a good story for Sally. Breakfast was hot, but company was cold. I finished as quickly as I could and called Franklin. He was out of town, but we managed to talk for about 20 minutes. He was delighted with the whole situation and told me to agree, but made sure I had copies of all the documents. He spoke as if he was in control of the situation, no matter which way it turned. I asked him to call Sally. Sally parked right outside the door to my room. She got out of the Jeep as I pulled up and looked a little embarrassed. It was easy to see from the look on her face that Franklin was calling her. For the next 2 hours, she apologized to me in every possible way. Sometimes feeling guilty is good and pleasant. She had already left when Miss Steinmetz returned with the papers for me to sign. For some reason, she also made me accept a check for $10,000. Hemingway's campaign continued to go downhill, but my divorce petition made its way through the legal system. Tracy was in College Station and now had a friend looking out for him. I got officially divorced just before the election. Franklin won and promised to repay me for my help. I told him that I would allow it if he gave me a sister. Things weren't going well for Darla. After the election, someone decided to accuse her of bigamy anyway. Before they could do anything, she simply disappeared. She was good at it. I didn't see or talk to her. I sold the truck and bought a house and a small gravel pit near Huron. Sally and I got married on Christmas Day, and all 5 of my T-boys were there. Betsy moved into double-wide and promised to take good care of him. The ultrasound showed that we were having a girl. Does anyone know any good girl names that start with the letter T?